Hi, this is Dominic from Full Drive, and not only is this the very first podcast that I've ever hosted, but this will be the first in a series of Full Drive related podcasts that I'm going to be recording, where I'm going to be talking to a big range of people, from Full Drive team riders and ambassadors to Full Drive dealers, hopefully some people within the foiling industry, as well as people doing really cool projects and expeditions using Full Drive, of course. So my hope is to talk to them about their experiences and what they're using Full Drive for, how they're finding it's helping them, any problems that they've come across and how to overcome them, all that sort of stuff, to be able to give you an idea of what Full Drive can do for you, its limitations, as well as the possibilities that it can provide. So in this first podcast, I'm going to talk to Steve Bowens and Simon Osborne, who are both currently carrying out a really cool expedition called Foil Around Britain. If you were to draw a line around Britain, then that would add up to roughly 3,500 miles. They've given themselves 6 weeks to do this expedition, and I'm joining them for this podcast around about halfway, around about 3.5 weeks in. So I'll be talking to them about their experiences so far, the highlights, the problems they've faced, and of course, exactly where Full Drive fits into a wing foiling expedition. Now, I'm following them on Instagram and reposting as much as I can on the Full Drive Europe Instagram page, but I really would urge everybody to follow them and to see what they get up to on a daily basis, all the trials and tribulations that they're facing, and also, if you possibly can, to donate to their to the charity of their choice, Cancer Research, because it is a very, very worthy cause indeed. So, without any further ado, I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves. So, over to Steve and Simon.
Hi, Dominic. I'm Steve. I live in Cornwall on the north coast in Portreath, and my background, I guess, I'm a lecturer in sports science and work in the outdoor industry in terms of licensing and run some courses and stuff like that. I've been wing foiling for about 3.5, 4 years, something like that. And living in Cornwall, we're very fortunate that we've got quite a lot of options in terms of we've got the north coast, the south coast, only 20 minutes away, and we've got Stithians Lake in the middle for flat water stuff. I think that's me. My passion in foiling is wing foiling, and especially in the waves. And more recently, having got Full Drive, obsessed with surfing. Absolutely obsessed with that. Anyway, that's nothing to do with this. That's me.
Yeah, and I'm Simon Osborne, and we're currently on an expedition where we're trying to become the first people to wing foil around Great Britain. We set off about 3.5 weeks ago.
We did try to hook up before you set off, but we were just too busy and it just didn't happen. But I'm so glad that you've been able to find time. It's not good for you because this is a windless day, and obviously you can't do anything without the wind. So personally, I'm happy that you've got a bit of a break so that we can do this. So tell me a little bit more about the expedition itself. It's called Foil Around Britain, or FAB for sure. I love that. I really do. It takes me back to the Thunderbirds.
Challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us about it. Why did you choose Great Britain? Why not the whole of the UK, British Isles? Just tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so we both obviously got into wing foiling not that long ago, and realised that it had the potential to cover some pretty impressive distances with the speed and the efficiency of the sport. Steve organised the first crossing from the Isles of Scilly to Land's End, which was a kind of 22 nautical mile crossing of some pretty exposed water in the UK. And we did that, and it went well. Well, it was pretty challenging.
We
made it. We thought, well, that kind of sparked a bit of an idea to perhaps do a longer multi-day journey somewhere. I kayaked around the UK back in 2002 and thought maybe that's a great challenge to try and take on the similar sort of thing, but on a different sport, and also to raise money for charity as well for cancer research was a key factor.
Can I just add into that, Dominic? Simon's has missed out and skipped out probably the most important factor, and that's alcohol. So I suggested to Simon after the trip back from the Scillies, and there were moments in that most of the time we couldn't see each other. Because it was quite a big swell. So when we all arrived on the beach, and all three of us, because Freddie Strueston came with us as well, and we were all there. That was a surprise to start with. So we were elated and like on high. And then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to wing fall around Cornwall? And then after a couple of beers, Simon was like, why stop? Yeah, why don't we just keep on going? And initially I was like, that's a really stupid idea. And I realised that initial thought was quite right. It is a really stupid idea. Anyway, we both agreed we would try and give it a go. Originally, we were talking about doing it like in a year's time, but for lots of reasons, work, family, just logistics, it fitted well to try and do it this year. I'd also just point out that this is our second start, because we were supposed to start on the 1st of September, or the first windy day. And we actually started at the very end of August, because we wanted to get around Land's End, because navigationally, tidally, weather, it's really tricky because of the angle of it and the tides and all the rest of it. So we thought we'd knock that off. So we got that done and then carry on up the north coast. And the first day we went out, we got into the middle of, just outside of Penzance, and the wind died. And the next day we came down, we tried again. We came out of Mousehole, and we foil drived out of Mousehole because there was no wind. We sat on the boards for nearly 2 hours, and then foil drive back in. And then we finally got some wind, so we decided, because the wind was a different direction, we started in St Ives, so just around the corner from Land's End. And we had really light wind, but we were flying for the first couple of hours, weren't we? Until we got St Agnes Head, and then the wind died.
And then we weren't.
And the slightly unfortunate thing was there was a fairly significant groundswell running, so we did land. We had to come in at Perranporth in no wind with overhead high surf, and a couple of the lifeguards came out in their IRB and watched us in, which we were really grateful for, because it was a good test of some of the kind of practice sessions that we've done in terms of dealing with that, and we actually used the foil drive. There was no way we could have got in without it, so we packed up the wings, came in on the foil drive. I made the stupid mistake of trying to take off on a set wing, because I thought, oh well, that'd be great, it'll get me all into the beach and then it'll be sorted. But I was on a 1099 foil. Simon, you're on a 1201.
Yeah,
it wasn't really conditions for that. I wiped out. Anyway, we got in, and nothing was broken or damaged, including us.
But the problem was that the forecast was for northerlies for the next 2 weeks, which was be straight against us, and it didn't look like it was going to change. So we had to really think hard and come up with a new plan, which was to go round anti-clockwise around Great Britain, and we just literally packed up the van, drove to the south coast, and headed off this way, which has turned out to be the right decision, because we've obviously covered over 1,000 kilometres now, and it's been going a lot better going this way.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy decision. We were stood on Perranporth Beach looking at solid surf, this time really strong winds, but from completely the wrong direction. We could have got out, we wouldn't have got, we probably would have got 10 miles. And it was literally, let's pack our stuff up, let's start again, drive to South Coast. And that first day was amazing. It was 126 kilometres, 120 kilometres.
Yeah, a long way.
Just flying that was after lunchtime, flying down the coast. We thought we'd be done by now after that first day.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a huge decision, but thankfully it sounds like it's paid off and it was the right decision, because it must have been nerve-wracking having to change your plans so drastically. But listen, you've just touched on so many things there, and you've rattled through them, and I'd love to get into some of those in a little bit more detail. You've just mentioned crossing from the Scillies to the mainland UK, and a kayak expedition. So in terms of duration, how do they compare to the Foil Around Britain expedition that you're doing now?
Well, the Scillies was a 1 day trip, so that was 44. About I think it was about 40 something K, wasn't it, in total? We're knocking off 40K in a morning here now. We were hoping to average about 100 kilometres a day. We haven't managed that, unfortunately, with lots of factors involved: winds, headlands, tides. It's been not quite as much as that. And then
so
obviously
the Scillies was one day.
Yeah.
The kayak expedition that you did, how long did that take?
That was 112 days in total, with 82 days on the water. So 30 days of bad weather. And I guess the way that this is turning out, this is we're not getting as many big long days as we hoped. So it's a little slower progress than what we were anticipating. But we didn't really have anyone to talk to about multi-day wingfoil trips and how they'd got on round tidal coastlines to really know if we would get those big days where we might cover 200k, or if we might find that we'll be waiting all the time for the weather. So there's been a lot of learning on this trip for both of us.
It does seem like you're pioneering this type of thing. Obviously, this ain't your first rodeo. You've got those 2 expeditions already done in the past. What was your anticipated duration for this particular event? What's the timeline that you were working on?
Well, we're both self-employed, so we're taking time out of work, and we gave it 6 weeks as a best case scenario, that if we average about 100 kilometers a day for 5 days a week, that would be enough. Simon and I also did a trip a few years ago. We rode across the Atlantic, which is 45 days, which is kind of an equivalent distance, I guess, or duration, if you like. And like Simon says, there's no blueprint to this. And I think maybe really stupidly looking back on it from my perspective now, I had an idea that we would be, when we did the row, we rode for 2 hours on, 2 hours off. We did that 24 hours a day. And every time you're on the oars, you're moving forward. And I think without thinking about it too much, we thought, well, we'll get up and we'll get on the water. If there's no wind, we'll bob along and we'll jump on the tide. It'll take us 6 hours that way. Or if there's wind, we'll be flying. And if the wind's the wrong direction, we'll tack up. It's not like that. Like I personally, Simon's an expert in tides, teaches tidal planning, navigation, all the marine stuff. And I'm not sure either of us necessarily anticipated what a big impact the tide is having on us along the British coastline. And that sounds stupid when I say it, because obviously it does.
It's that combination with the wind, I think, as well, which is key. So the tide against us, if the wind's a certain direction, it takes some of that power out the wind, which is kind of critical at times. Just like a couple of knots of wind speed away, and we don't get foiling. And then,
especially when you're doing crossings.
Yeah, and the coastline of the UK is very it's in and out, turns corners all the time. So the wind's never that same direction all day long. On the beam, likes a really nice angle for us to cover the distance for an entire day. We get to a headland and we change, and then it's all different.
And ironically, we've used that exact same principle to our advantage, because there's been a lot of light wind days where there's not been enough wind to foil. But we've waited for the tide to turn. We've got wind against tide. We wait for the second, third hour, and all of a sudden we can foil. We can foil in 6 knots. We can foil in less than 6 knots if we've got the tide pushing 2 or 3 knots the other direction. But it's difficult to point, if you know what I mean. We're trying to go downwind. If the tide's going one way and the wind's going the other, you can get on foil and you can go across the wind and you can kind of go slightly the other. But you can't just... In my head, when I driving down the road, daydreaming about this day in, day out for the last year. In my head, I had these visions of these trips where we go for downwinders. You know, we'll go and Simon's wife will meet us somewhere. We'll drop off, or a friend will meet us. We'll get on the water and we'll do 2 or 3 hours downwind. We get off at the end. We have a coffee, we have a beer. It's a nice day. I guess the difference is when we do that, we're looking at the forecast 4 or 5 days ahead. We then decide where we're going to launch, where we're going to land. We look at the tide, we look at the swell, and we put all those things together. Whereas what we're doing today is we're getting to, I don't know where we are now. Where are we?
Withersea.
I've never even heard of it before. It's very nice. We're at Withersea. We've arrived here. We had intended to carry on another 20k last night, but the wind died. We came in through the swell, and then today we have to leave from here.
Whatever
regardless.
the forecast.
Yeah. So it's a complete changeable feast, and that's something that I'm quite glad that you've just admitted that you didn't anticipate how important that would be, or how much of an impact it would have on your progress, because I certainly didn't. And you saying it now, it does seem to be that this expedition is every bit about the your tactics, if you like, because it's not just about getting up on foil with your wing and blasting away. You've got to react to all these changing conditions, which can have a massive impact on your progress. And let's face it, it can be dangerous. Now, I've listened to what you guys have said just then about your jobs. You're both self-employed. Steve, I believe you said you're in sports science, that field.
Yeah, and I run lifeguard courses as part of my business. So I'm in around the water a lot.
Right, and Simon, it sounds like you're an expert in all things marine and coastal. Is that a fair approximation?
Yeah, I teach kayaking. I've been teaching kayaking for God knows how long, but since the beginning of working. So yeah, specifically to kayaking.
So you guys, you have a wealth of experience that is relevant to this type of project, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because although, and this is not to belittle you whatsoever, but I think it's fair to say that you're not professional watermen. You're not sponsored by water sports or foiling companies. You don't earn your living by foiling. Just doing these expeditions or foiling. Yeah, but you still have a wealth of experience. So I suppose because I've got in my mind as an ex-teacher and as now a employee of Foil Drive, I've always got safety in mind, and I suppose I really just want to get across to people, if people are thinking about doing what you guys are doing, it's not as easy as you might think, because watching your posts every day, it's like, wow, okay, so you are battling against a different, sometimes totally unexpected set of conditions that can affect you in ways. And then, of course, you've got the issue of Simon, I gather you've had a few technical hitches with your wind wing. Is that,
yeah? It's. I mean, that's one of the big factors, and that's why we got in touch with you guys at Foil Drive. Really, is that we needed a safety backup, and the idea of taking a rib, a fast enough boat to keep up with us around Great Britain, was going to be very costly and not that great for the environment as well, to be honest. We were keen to see how we could integrate Foil Drive into the safety to make this trip possible and safe for what we're trying to do. So we did lots of testing with the Foil Drive to see how far we could go. Should our wing pop, which is the kind of key thing we're conscious of, it doesn't take much for that to happen. The bladders inside are pretty fragile, and if we're five miles away from land and it's slightly upwind, we would struggle to prone paddle the board back in. So having that Foil Drive capability has just been an absolute game changer to make it possible. I
could just like to add on to that. When we were talking about this, and you give us lots of really good advice, I think I was pretty steadfast in we're really grateful to have this as a safety backup. It's there for an emergency. We're not going to use it day to day.
Really have to.
We're not foil driving around Britain, and I said that to you several times now, and that's still the case. But we've used it every day.
It's been essential in so many ways.
We couldn't do what we're doing. We could do it with the boat, and I think a boat would give us so much confidence. We could do some like we did. We went across the Wash day before yesterday, which is a very significant tidal area. And with the boat, you wouldn't think twice about it. But the wind died for half an hour halfway across. We are 15 kilometers from the near shore, and it's up tide. There's no way we are dead in the water. Yeah. But actually, the Foil Drive, that doesn't help us in that situation.
It more or less does, though.
It gives us the confidence that, if we can get within sort of 6 kilometres of the coast, we can probably get in. Yeah. And also, just from a logistics perspective, a lot of the South Coast and a lot of Great Britain has coastal towns that are up estuaries. It is impossible to get up an estuary in an offshore wind, which is when we are making our biggest gains in terms of distance, on an ebb tide. So we've done that several times on the way.
It's the last few hundred meters just trying to get in somewhere. You'd spend hours just flapping around trying to get up somewhere, and if it's offshore, as Steve says, it'd be a nightmare.
And then somebody calls the Coast Guard and says there's these people in difficulty, whereas actually, rather than fapping about falling in, we can either deflate the wing or just hold it behind us, kneel down in the board, and we can get into a safe harbour which has been a godsend, and getting out through surf, which I think we're going to have to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I see that.
Like you say, this is wing foiling around Britain, and the full drive is a backup. I mean, it's when you first contacted me, and there's a little story just in that in itself, which I'll talk about in just a second. But when we first started discussing the possibility of you using full drive for your expedition, I had no idea, and I think it's fair to say as well that you didn't really know how it was going to be useful, if it was going to be useful. We gave you a couple of sets to test it, and we just said, let's see how you feel, and if you think it's going to be useful, then we'd be happy to support you. And now it turns out that it's been useful in more ways than you anticipated, and it's really I'm really stoked to hear that you found it useful, if not invaluable. So that's great to hear. But you also touched on logistics and planning and everything else. So I'm interested in quite a few of those aspects. So, for example, there have got to be days when you're on the water for a long, long time. How do you cope with nutrition and keeping your energy levels up if you're on the water?
So we've had a few conversations about this. I can tell you what we should do, and I can tell you what we do. So in the morning, we get up, we stuff our face. I have at least 3 coffees and a massive bowl of cereal. If the wind doesn't fill in, we'll normally go and get a bacon sandwich somewhere.
Second breakfast.
And another coffee. And then we
Sorry,
do...
Noise.
We're actually in an old airfield, so there's a bit of air traffic around. We do carry proper, like we have sports bars. So we're not carrying lunch because everything's wet. So we've got sports bars from Decathlon. They've very kindly provided us with all of the sort of snacks that we need. Predominantly what we should be doing is, whilst we're foiling, is taking the snacks that are have a high glycemic index, so that like quite sugary, sweet stuff to maintain energy levels. We're probably snacking on the cereal bars the most because I think they're a bit more palatable mixed in with the others. And we've got some protein bars which are really good for after we finish. Protein's essential for rebuilding. We've been out for some of the days 8 or 9 hours at a time. It's quite catabolic. It's quite destructive to the body, and the body needs protein to be able to rebuild. However, we crave carbs, and I think a friend of mine many years ago for an endurance event said, "Forget everything you learned about nutrition. Just get the calories in." And that's what we're doing, and that seems to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we try and eat as much as we can before we get on the water, really, and then we'll carry 5 or 6 bars with us. That's all, and then we've got about a litre of water each. We're using a running vest, which has got water that we can access whilst we're foiling along, but not a lot of stuff, really. Not a lot of nutrition on the water. It's really hard.
What we're also finding is when we get on the water, it tends to be, when it's windy in the morning, it tends to blow right through, and for whatever reason we quite often don't stop until kind of 2 o'clock. And then it's a bit like, it feels like a triathlon. We've got a support driver. My wife Sally is actually driving the van at the minute. Simon's dad's, I know we've got friends that have done it. We have a tracker on us. We have 2 trackers. Simon's carrying one which is linked to the website. I'm carrying one which actually links, it's called RA Safe Tracks, and it means that the Coast Guard can track us and can contact us on that as well. So the driver has 2 ways of identifying where we are, and they're constantly trying to guess where we might get off the water. So when we get off, we shove our head in the back of the van, we shove some sandwiches down our neck, we get back on the water and carry on.
Get indigestion for the afternoon.
Yeah, and then in the evening, we eat whatever's in front of us, really.
Well, you've just led into one of my next questions on that, and that's about comms, not just between yourselves, because you mentioned that sometimes you might be 5 miles off the coast, and like you say, the coastline just wiggles in and out, so if you're trying to cut across, make as far ground, for example, north direction, then, as the coastline goes in, you suddenly find yourselves a long way offshore. And I'm assuming that there are times when you guys are actually quite a long distance apart from each other.
We try to stay... Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just saying, but also there's that element of comms, not just between yourselves, but between your backup team, for how the hell are they going to know where you're going to get in and when? So yeah, just tell us from that comms point of view, how have you been coping?
Yeah, this is a really key area actually. So we've got something called BB Talking, which is it's a really key bit of kit. It means that we've got an open channel between myself and Steve the whole time in our ear. So we don't have to press anything to talk. We can just talk to each other. And it's got about 1 kilometre range, and it's via Bluetooth. And the great thing about this system, I think Steve's just grabbing it, is that it can actually link into a phone as well. So the support vehicle can phone us and talk open channel to the two of us at the same time, so we can have a conversation about where we're going to be. So it's on the side of the helmet here is the little Bluetooth device, which links into a headphone, sort of waterproof headphones, and a waterproof, windproof mic, and they're crystal clear. Really, really key bit of kit, because we have to make a lot of decisions on the water. We're looking at a headland, we can see waves breaking. We're trying to decide, should we go on the inside or the outside? We can chat about that as we're going along. And also, it's been quite rough a lot of the time, and you can't turn around very easily to see where the other person is. But the other person behind you can say, yeah, I'm behind you, I'm about 100 metres, upwind slightly. Yeah, let's keep going on this direction. That is just such a game changer. We didn't have that for the Sillies, and it was for the crossing we did. And it was really, really hard to keep in touch with each other and make decisions.
On the Sillies, we took a handheld VHF radio and we relied on that for comms. It just didn't work. When I had mine on here, and it was, when we started, it was not that windy, but by the time we finished, it was 4-6, and we couldn't see each other between the swell. So trying to foil along, get this, press the button and talk was pointless. It didn't work. It's fine when you're sat on your board, but when you're sat on your board not moving, and it's quite tiring getting up and down all the time. However, we do carry a handheld VHF all the time. We've used this a lot. So yesterday, for instance, we had to go across. So there's other things that we haven't really mentioned that are hazards. There's a lot of firing ranges around the UK, which I wasn't aware of. So when we come into the firing range, we can get hold of the control centre on channel 16 on here. They'll put us onto their working channel, and we can find out if there's live fire. We had a little incident yesterday. It wasn't a big deal, but it was, we got on the edge of a firing zone and contacted the control center, and it turned out, yes, they were operating, but they were fine with it, and they said, yeah, just carry on. Anyway, we can get them on the handheld VHF.
That's a relief. So hang on, when you say firing range, are we talking, guns, rifles, or are we talking the big ones that go bang?
Yesterday was Typhoon aeroplanes and dive bombing at big red targets on the shore. So we saw that ahead of us and thought, I think we need to check in here before we go any further.
When you're planning this sort of expedition, I certainly wouldn't have, factored in dodging bullets and air to ground missiles. That's a little bit bizarre.
So there's been about six firing ranges so far. They are all around the UK, and they are, some of them, quite large. So we do check to see where they are. This one slipped us by, but they normally have markers and things, so we saw those, and so we knew we were about to go into it. So we jumped on the radio, which is great. They're all very supportive and understanding, because we can't necessarily go 15 miles out offshore to go around them.
And it's that's also from a logistics perspective. We had when we went round Portland Bill, which is a pretty significant rounding. When we left Lyme Regis, the last get out on our way there, because Chesil Beach is a real big shingle beach, it's really steep, and there was swell, and when it dumps, you can't. It's not safe. There's no way you can get out.
Great kit.
So we had to foil 50 kilometres with no get out before we got to Portland Bill. Then when we get there, we only had a 2-hour window to get round with the tide, and even in that, the tide is still humping along. And then the next get out really was Weymouth, although you can get out in Portland Bill.
very easily. But yeah,
and we're really grateful. Just big shout out to the guys from OTC. Tris sent a couple of lads out. They actually came out in a rib, met us on the end of Portland Bill, and just watched us round, which was
very reassuring.
Very reassuring. It was pretty humane. But we're also carrying, every morning we are phoning and talking to the Coast Guard. We're telling them our plans. We're telling them description of our equipment. We are telling them when we're going to be off the water. They're asking us what equipment we're carrying. And there has been, because we are in places that nobody's seen wingfoilers before, we have had people call the Coast Guard to say, oh, there's a windsurfer and it looks like they're in distress. Because we fall off and we turn. Like, I'm hoping by the end of this we can both jibe a bit better, but at the minute it's not really very easy. We've got about 16 kilos in our backpacks, and the boards are like hybrid boards.
Just excuses.
Just a bit shit at jibing. Anyway, so we've had a few people call the Coast Guard. They've been able to phone or radio us. They already know where we are. When they look on Safe Tracks, they can see that it's us. They know that because we tell them every day we've got a foil drive and we've got a range of, well, we're saying about 6 kilometres because we're confident we could do that in a range of conditions. So they're not too concerned. They're not necessarily selling the lifeboat out. The other bits of comms are carrying day-night flare. This is 2-in-1. So it's got a bobbly bit on the end for the nighttime one, which hopefully we won't need. And we've got day orange smoke. We're also carrying a PLB, a personal locator beacon. We've bit wet. These are linked to via satellite, so these will work. We don't need any cellular network or anything like that. We've both got one of these each.
Any wingfoilers on open water foiling should be carrying one of them. Really, they're just a key bit of safety kit. Amazing bit.
Yeah, it's dead easy. You pull the thing out the side of it, press the button, hold it. It sends a message via satellite. When that comes over the base station, it downloads. Alarm goes off in the Coast Guard station. This must be registered. It's a legal requirement. And then it'll come up with all our details in the database. They'll know what has been set off. They'll know where it is. And that'll have a link to our emergency contacts, description of the craft that we're on, all that stuff.
Well, I know what I'm adding to my online shopping cart now. That's definitely something I'll be investing in.
They're not particularly cheap, but they're a really good bit of kit. And they're quite small as well. You can fit them, around your neck on a wetsuit.
I'll send you, Dominic, a link to the Safe Tracks as well, because that has, at the start, every day, the Coast Guard's asking, do you have Safe Tracks? It's a free app. It doesn't cost anything. You can pre-plan your route into it in the morning with the waymarks, and they can see you on their computer system. As long as you have network, as long as you have cellular coverage, which we're often, most of the time, we're close enough to show that they do. That's been really useful as well.
Well, this is really good because, I mean, not only are you doing this expedition, you're doing it as a challenge, you're doing it for charity to raise money for, you said, cancer research. But also, I think something else that's really good that's coming out of this is that you're highlighting various different safety aspects for other wingfoilers out there. And even though most people, and let's face it, I think another one of the challenges for you guys is, as you've just highlighted, the amount of equipment that you're having to take with you every single day. And you're not going in the easy areas for wingfoiling. You're putting yourselves through some of the hardest conditions and locations, whereas most people wingfoiling might just, go to the local beach. They know it's fairly safe. They go up and down in the same area. They know it inside out. They know the conditions. So for most people, some of these safety elements might not be 100% necessary. But if anybody's planning even a small expedition, and let's face it, when I was living in Oman, I did a 45k trip up the coastline. I went out only about 4.2 kilometres to a particular island that's renowned for, funnily enough, as a shark nursery, and then all the way back again. And that round trip took me 45k, and I had minimal safety equipment. And speaking to you guys now, and a few other people that have done extended wingfoil trips, whether it's a day or a few days, it really, every time I speak to people, there's just more and more emphasis being put on safety now. And it's just, I think it's so important that if anybody is planning on doing something, that if even just more than a mile offshore, they should think about the potential dangers and what they can do, because there's a lot of things out there that they can do to minimise the risk. So thanks for highlighting that as well.
We have experienced what happens when when things do go wrong. We did a downwinder from the Lizard back to Falmouth last year on a good forecast, perfect conditions, lovely. And then just as we got to Black Rock, which is in the entrance to the Falmouth estuary, the wind literally just switched off, and we prone paddled. Luckily, we had the tide with us, but it was over 2 kilometres to get into St Mawes, where there's a ferry. Unfortunately, our van wasn't in St Mawes; it was on the other side of the estuary. So we got in there. We can pay for coffees on our watch, which is quite helpful. Got the ferry, got over. Simon's wife when she got back from work, picked up the van, came to get us. This isn't. We haven't just decided we're going to do trips. This is all we've got, and we started with it. We've learned from experience. And the other thing, actually, and it was Simon that came up with this. I wasn't keen at the start, but I'm quite keen on it now. We're actually carrying paddles, which we have used. This is a 4-piece SUP paddle. And we got that through Decathlon. I know there's been a few occasions where the wind's completely died and there isn't much waves or swell. And that just gives us the option of getting back to shore again, because prone paddling is not quite as efficient.
Yeah, we can do that probably for quite a few hours. We've tried, using our arms for even 10 minutes, and you're pretty empty. But with that, you could do that for a while. You could paddle with a paddle on your knees if needed, and cover some distance, because we're on pretty floaty boards. So
yeah, but it's inevitable that if you did have to do something like that, it's bound to happen when you're not fresh, when you're tired anyway, and then it just makes it harder. Yeah, I can paddle for maybe half an hour before I get tired, but not after I've done 4 hours of battling against wind and
exactly
tide.
Yeah,
after a hard day. So listen, it's been amazing chatting to you, and I'm not quite finished. If you've got a few more minutes, that would be awesome.
Waiting for wind.
So the inevitable questions of what's been your highlights and your lowlights. What have you found the most challenging and the most rewarding so far?
I really, really thought it was a special moment. Wing foiling round Beachy Head, which are the white cliffs with a red and white lighthouse off the end of it, on the south coast of England. It was dramatic. There was black clouds. There was squally conditions. It just felt pretty wild and cool. And the sun was kind of coming out, even though there's black clouds. So everything was kind of lit up, and it was pretty amazing. I don't know. It just felt like a real milestone to get along the white cliffs on the south coast, and it felt like we were doing something pretty cool at that point, I think.
That's my favourite post of yours so far, because it did give us a perspective that not many people have seen, or at least not by themselves from that perspective. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we've all seen pictures of it, but you actually filming each other as you're foiling past, that seemed like it was a pretty special moment.
Yeah.
Steve, how about yourself?
I've probably got two. One very similar to Simon, and that was already sort of mentioned it, going around Portland Bill, because Portland Bill is a place that I go and I work in around Falmouth quite a lot. Weymouth, not Falmouth. And I've often stood out in the bill and looked out at that tidal race and gone, I wouldn't want to be out there. But actually not just around in the bill. It was the total exposure, the total vulnerability, 50 kilometres of no landing, no safety boat, and actually good conditions and lovely swell. It was, to me, that's what all my daydreams had been about. And the sun was out, and it was just... And, I think when we're in those situations, quite often we chat on the comms, and we talk about everything except for what we're both thinking about, which is, if it goes wrong, we're screwed. So that was lovely. But the other thing I would say is, nearly every day we've got people coming up to us, is that one of those hoverboards? And they're chatting, and they're really interested, and everybody you talk to is interested. We've got the vans all logoed up, it says cancer research on it, and it seems that everybody's been affected by cancer one way or another. And we've had people who have Simon, what's the second name that fixed the wing? Simon Sanderson heard about that we'd had a pretty serious blowout on the wing. He got in touch. He put us up for the night. He fixed the wing. We went out for a pint with him, and a bit of food. And other people have put us up in their garden and given us our house to stay in. That's been amazing. The interaction, it gives real confidence in the population around our coastal towns around the UK. We have some very nice, kind people around this country.
That's so cool. That's yeah. I mean, I didn't doubt it, but it's lovely to hear these stories of people helping you. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on that there was a bit of a funny story about how we came into contact with each other. I believe one of you bumped into my son, who was using my old Full Drive Assist Plus down on his local beach in Cornwall.
We can go back at the evening before that, where Steve came over to my house for dinner, and we said we wanted to chat about this amazing plan that we were thinking about doing. And we kind of sat around and said, you know what, if we could get hold of a full drive, I think the trip would be on. I think we could make it work with that, because we can't afford to get a rib, and we don't really want to use a support boat all the way around. It would just be amazing if we could somehow see if we could find a way of getting hold of her.
I have to say, Simon told me, because I didn't really know what foil drive was. I saw posts of people doing it, and I was like, oh, e-foiling, I'm not really into that. And Simon's like, oh, what we need, if we could get a foil drive, then we are on. That is everything else.
That was the night before.
Sure. I was running a lifeguard course on Portreath Beach the next day, and I'm there with these candidates. We were just about to get on the water. They'd been doing their stuff in the clubhouse. And these two young lads walked past, and what I noticed was a bright red access board. I thought, and Portreath, I think I said to you at the time, Portreath is not really the place to go foiling. It's really popular and famous for bodyboarding of all things.
Steep, dumpy way.
So it caught my attention immediately, and I was like, do they know what they're doing? And then I had a quick look, and it had...
No, I don't think they did.
Foil drives on it. So I said to the guys, right, everybody get packed out and I'll go and have a chat. And yes, I can't remember was it Ben?
Yeah.
So I was chatting away to Ben, and he was like, oh yeah, we're kind of experimenting with this. And he said, oh, my dad's Dominic Hoskins, you've probably seen him on YouTube. And I was like, well, I don't really follow kind of foil drive type stuff. So anyway, that was bizarre. And then I was like, oh, he's kind of involved with foil drive, he kind of works for them. So I was like, have you got his number? That was so bizarre.
It was very strange.
It's one of life's coincidences, isn't it? Yeah, you sort of have a thought, and then suddenly the universe provides an opportunity. Because I can remember he sent me a message saying, I've just met somebody on the beach after a full drive session. They're planning some sort of an expedition foiling around the Britain, and they might get in touch with you. And I was intrigued, and I was just thinking, I'd quite like to follow this up. How do I do that? And then I got your message, and we started chatting. Okay, so let's just do it, because this is a full drive podcast. I'm just going to ask you very, very briefly, how have you found full drive useful for you? Because you obviously had a preset sort of idea of what it might do for you in terms of usefulness. Has it lived up to your expectation? Have you used it exactly how you thought, or have there been any differences and unexpected things that you've used it for?
Hopefully that noise is okay, but yeah, it's fine. We hoped that it would be there for an emergency use only. That was the kind of key concept, and that we probably had the controllers in our backpack, and if something went wrong, the wing popped, we got becalmed, whatever it was that happened, we'd grab the controllers out and we would full drive back to the shore, and that would be their kind of key use. As it turns out, we use them to get off the beach in the morning when there's surf, which is most mornings, to get us away from the coastline, maybe to get out into the wind. So we use it just for a minute or two there, just to get offshore.
Yeah, because there's got to be quite a few places that are in a wind-free zone, and you've got to reach that wind line, haven't you?
Yeah, there's so much of that. So that's a real key. And then we get out into the wind line, and it's brilliant. You can kind of see it on the horizon sometimes, and you're just like, yeah, let's just get out a little bit, full drive, to save time as well, because we could float and wait for half an hour, or we could just do 2 minutes on and get out to the wind. And then with very light days, they're great days for us making progress. But we We do then have to have a little squeeze of the foil drive to get up onto foil, and then we can be on foil and really make the most of some stupidly light days. Like when you just can't. I can't even. Sometimes I'm just like, how are we foiling right now? Like there's so little wind. We've managed to just break that surface tension with the foil drive, get up, and then we're off. And then I guess we have had to use it at the end of days when winds have dropped. We've been committing ourselves to some pretty open crossings, and we found ourselves 4 or 5k offshore. The wind's gone, and we've just had to get back to shore. We've sat around waiting for half an hour for it to come back in. It's getting late. It's not coming back in. Well, let's just go into the nearest town and get into the shore.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I second everything that Simon said there. I think the biggest thing for me is confidence.
Yeah.
Without the foil drive, just 2 days ago, going across the wash, it's 30k crossing. We know that there's probably 15k where we're completely exposed. But actually, the first 5 or 6k either side, we can get back. If something goes wrong, we can still get back to shore. And actually, more than that, we've both got foil drive on our kit. If one wing pops, let's say my wing pops, I can use my foil drive to get potentially, in good conditions, 10 kilometers. And then when I've burnt the battery out, we can swap boards. Simon can continue with his wing. I go on his board. I've actually got a range of over 20k potentially. Yeah. That's a long way. If we're going downwind and or down tide, we can get a lot of places. It's given us so much confidence, and I think I'm really conscious. People watching this are going to be like, "Oh yeah, well, foil drive will helping them out." But genuinely, I can't really see myself doing trips now without that safety net, without that backup of if it all goes wrong, we can get to safety, even if it's just out of the tidal area into a safe area, into flat water where we can paddle, whatever it is. In terms of unexpected things or things that aren't directly positive, when we started, the actual winging was a bit different. Because when we got the units, we had no wind for like a month of August, so I was using it for prone foiling every day. But when I started using it with the wing, there's extra drag because you have the battery and the at the top of the mast and stuff, and that took me a bit of getting used to. And I was like, wow, it's taking me more wind to get on foil because I have this unit here. And that is true, but it doesn't take that much more wind.
No, if there's wind, it's fine.
Yeah, and what I've ended up doing is I've actually changed my foiling. I'm now foiling much higher in the mast, and on reflection, I should have been doing that anyway, because actually more mast out of the water is less resistance, you're travelling faster, and it's actually trained me to foil better in a lot of ways from that perspective.
Well, what cable length have you got for the motor? Because that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, we've got I think it's a 15 and a 20, was it?
That's right.
And I'm on the 20.
And I've shortened them a little bit with a little curve to the cable, so I'm probably running at slightly less than 15.
We're about to release a new motor system. It's actually the same motor, but just a different connection system, so that the cables are interchangeable, and we're going to have a 12 centimeter cable, a 15, a 20, a 25, and obviously the 60 and 70 for continual motor use. But the 12 for winging would probably be the best option, because then the motor pod is...
That's probably what I'm on.
Right.
Is probably 12 with a slight bend in it, I would have thought.
Yeah.
You're only using it just to get that little bit extra up, and if you needed it for safety wise, that's enough to unstick the board from the surface and get some distance covered.
And it's, to my mind, the use of foil drive in any use, whether it's an expedition or whether it's just for your own fun, you're foiling because you want to be on foil. That's the whole point. And whether you use a paddle or your arms or a wind wing or foil drive, they're all methods of getting you up on foil. And at the end of the day, it seems to do that pretty damn well. And like you say, there are going to be compromises. no matter what you use, if you've got a paddle, you've got to have that in your hand the whole time you're on foil. A wind wing, when you're downwinding, you're holding it out, and you've got to compensate for holding that wind wing when you're riding the swell. The foil drive, there is the additional weight, although most of that sort of disappears because of the placement just above the mast. But like you say, once you get used to it, it's surprising how little of an impact that actually makes, and you're free to foil even in the lightest conditions. And it still blows my mind how many days foil drive has saved for me in terms of, well, if I could just get up on foil, I could still have a really cool session, and I can with foil drive, and it seems to be helping you in the same way. So I'm super stoked that it's been able to help you. And last thing I want to ask about before I thank you and say goodbye is, can you just repeat first of all where you started, where you are now, and then just the anticipated routes, maybe stops before the end?
Yeah, so we started in Falmouth in Cornwall. We've done about 1,200 kilometres or something like that. We're now on the east coast, so we've gone all the way along the south coast. We've turned the corner at Dover, heading up the east coast. We're about a third of the way up the east coast, maybe, something like that.
We're in Yorkshire. Simon had Yorkshire tea this morning.
I did, had some Yorkshire tea, which surprised us both. We got so far north. And we're eyeing up Scotland now, so we're trying to get up the rest of the east coast done. And the anticipation is that we'll get as far as we can with the time that we've got, and see where that gets us. And then once we've rested, recovered, and then maybe we'll have a conversation about the second phase.
Okay. And are there any spots or locations that you're sort of anticipating would be more difficult or challenging than others?
We've got Flamborough Head coming up, another headland sticking out just in a couple of days or days time even. There's the Farne Islands. There's lots of tide up there. There's the challenge every day. Like, it's just, if also some of the easier sections of coastline, you go out in more challenging conditions because they're easier, and they become harder. So the hard sections of coastline, you make sure the conditions are just right. They become easier. So it all just feels like every day is a similar level of challenge. On the east coast, we went out in really strong headwinds we wouldn't have done that round Portland Bill or one of the major headlands, but we did it on that section because there's a beach. But for me, it was definitely the most challenging conditions, and it's what's supposed to be a lovely, calm, easy section of coastline, but it was definitely my hardest day. By a long way.
When we left, Dominic, I'll be honest, I didn't sleep for 4 days because I was thinking about Cape Wrath, and I was thinking about Land's End, and I was thinking about these sort of classic, really significant headlands and bits. But just came to realization, actually, you just can't do that. Every day you work out what's the challenge that day, you get around that, and then the next day wake up and think about the next one. Because apart from anything, the forecasts are all over the place. Like, we're looking 3 days ahead. It looks like we're going to have 4-7 coming right down the North Sea, massive swell. And, I was out walking on the beach this morning thinking, there's no point in worrying about that because it might happen or it might not. What we need to think about each day is just what do we see on the water right now, what's happening, and deal with that.
And what's your smallest wing?
3.5.
Yeah. 3.5, better buy 2.
Yeah.
By the sounds of it.
Yeah. Big rough mine though, that's the thing.
We've been foiling in genuinely 4.6, gusts of 7. I've been on the 7 metre, Sammy's been on the 6.5. The range of this kit is amazing. And the other thing that's really amazed me is we've been on big kit all the time. We've used the 5 metre one, so we used the 4.
The smallest wing I've used the 4, and that was just for a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the time we're on 6 metres, 6.5, 7 metre wings.
That's
and just
surprise.
Dealing with too much wind because we don't want to be becalmed. That's the key thing. We want to get up foiling early, and if it's too windy and we have to flag it out a bit and spill a bit of wind, that's fine. Like, that's safe.
It's not what I was anticipating at all. I got a 7 metre wing and I was like, well, that's quite a lot of money. I'm probably not going to use it. Maybe it'll still be worth something at the end of it. It's in excellent condition and will be available in about 6 weeks' time.
Yeah,
but it's been well used.
Double the size of its original. Yeah. So, with that in mind, what type of foils are you using mostly? What size and aspect area?
Yeah, we've pretty much not wanted to change much. We want something that gets up early, has a low stall speed, and just it maybe doesn't handle really fast and strong winds very well, but it'll handle it if we just put a lot of front foot pressure. So I've been on the 1201.
And I've been on the 1099, and
So
I think
these are axis foils. For people out there who don't know axis foils, that's
right.
wingspan. So 1201 is it's an Art Pro. It's high aspect foil, but it's got quite a good low end for a high aspect foil. It's in terms of area, I've forgotten. Is it about
1400?
Yeah,
13. Yeah, something like that.
Around about 1400 centimeters squared. And Steve, you said the 1099, did you?
Yeah, I'm on the 1099.
So that's the original
with
art.
The original ART. Yeah. There's a lot to be said with familiarity. I mean, there's days that I wish I was on because I've got 999, and they're the two foils. They're my two foils, and they're what I'm familiar with. But because we're out all day, within a day, it's going to be windy and it's going to be light winds, and so familiarity is an aspect to it. There's also a little bit. I have hit every bloody rock since we came round Dover, every single rock along this east coast, and I'm going directly behind Simon at times. He doesn't hit it, and I hit it. So I'm kind of just dealing with the fact that I'm just going to sacrifice this foil. But it's been a good all-round foil, and even when it's been windy, it's been all right to control. It's a bit of a handful in the swell.
And we've gone for quite long fuses, so that there's stability, because we're on that foil for a long time. We don't want it twitchy. We want it pretty stable for covering distances. So I'm on the standard
and
fuse,
I'm on the short.
Which, it is quite long. Makes pumping a little different for those lighter wind days, but it's certainly... it's nice to have that kind of a bit more stability to the platform.
I can imagine, because you're in very choppy, rough conditions most of the time. Let's finish this off, because I think people will want to know. The last bits of kit we haven't discussed are the rear stabilisers and, of course, the boards.
It's a 375 progressive, and I'm on the Access Hybrid 120 litre board. You're on the Fanatic.
Yeah, I'm on the Fanatic 120 litre downwind SUP kind of hybrid board as well that they do. Slightly recessed deck for a bit more stability in that.
Same stab.
Same stab, yeah.
And
you're
both happy with your equipment choices. It's what you need for this type of expedition, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think maybe in hindsight, some of the learning points are maybe we could do with a second lighter wind wing, so that we're on par. We've gone with Steve's on a half a metre bigger wing than me, so whenever I'm on the 6.5, he's on the 7. Those really light wind days, maybe something that's really good for light winds for both of us is probably, I don't want to hold Steve back. And then the other thing would be maybe on the really light wind days, maybe some the option of a front foil, which maybe has a slightly lower stall speed, so we can keep pumping through. But you then have downsides, and you have to keep switching kit around. You wish you were on something else, and then you get overpowered because I'm on a 7 metre and that's too big for me. So it's really hard to say, but they're the only two bits. Maybe the boards have been brilliant.
I'm really glad. These things. It's like it's equivalent to driving a truck. I mean, these are big boards, so these are big boards, but it means that every day, even on the windy days, the wind has completely died, and we've been able to stand and hold the wing and just cruise along. Even off foil, we can, in a very light wind, we're often doing 4 or 5 kilometres an hour, especially if there's a bit of tide. So that with a small foil board, we wouldn't be able to do that. There's also a bit of a difference in terms of equipment. Simon and I we're different sizes. I'm probably 14 or 16 kilos heavier, which is why we decided we would go half a metre different size with the wing all the way. So every time, if Simon's on a 5, I'll be on the 5.5, and that, like Simon says, that I think has worked well up to the really light winds days when I'm on a North Loft Pro 7 metre, which is everything about it is about getting going to light winds, and maybe not necessarily the size, but just the design of it is a bit different to the 6.5, and that's meant that on the really light wind days I can keep pumping.
I'm just sweating.
On that, just very quickly, and actually this is a key point for foil drive. Sorry, I know we're dragging on.
No, that's fine.
You've probably heard of the Thames Estuary. I think everybody in the world has heard of the Thames Estuary. There's one or two boats coming out of there, and some of them are relatively big. We launched to go across the Thames in
6 knots.
Well, I think it was probably 8 when we launched, and then it became 4. And we pumped across the Thames 8 kilometres the whole way.
No wind, really.
And we both must have lost 2 kilos of
I
sweat.
can imagine that's going some, especially with the 1099. That's I know it's a good pump foil, but it's not the foil of choice that I would use for super light winds.
Just pumping with the wing, getting into that rhythm, just trying to keep it moving.
But without the foil drive, we wouldn't have been able to unstick the board. And so that wouldn't have been possible. So when we give it a squeeze, unstuck the board, then we can pump. We can pump and pump and pump until we're wrecked. And then we have a little rest.
Get the heart rate
give
down.
It a squeeze, pump and pump. We did that for 8K. And I have to say, I never want to do that again.
Yeah. You get extra motivation with a big cargo ship coming towards you, though. So
I can imagine, yeah. You should have told me. I would have lent you my 1401. That would have given you a little
That's
bit
not what
more.
we want to know now, Dominic.
Well, yeah.
We have been dreaming of 1401s on some days, for sure.
I'm not sure it'd survive, or you would survive using it in 4, 6, or 7, though. That's maybe out of its range.
Maybe not.
Yeah, that is the issue, isn't it? Yeah, it's a compromise.
Yeah. Awesome. Listen, guys, thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat to me about it. I think people are going to find this super interesting. I certainly have.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to donate towards cancer research, on the front of the website, there's a Just Giving page. If anyone's interested and can help in any way, that's amazing. And you can obviously follow the rest of the journey with a tracker on there. So.
Yeah. And thanks for all your help so far,
you.
Dominic. You've been amazing, mate. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. I am torn between jealousy of you doing this trip and also thinking, thank God that I'm not putting myself through what you guys are having to endure. So it's nice to be able to follow you from the comfort of from the Full Drive office or home.
It was 4 degrees this morning when we got up, just so you know.
4 degrees.
Oh.
Yeah. It's getting colder now. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you ever so much.
Thanks again.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, Dominic.
Bye-bye.